Hey guys, Breadgod Gaming here. Hope you're having a good day. I'm gonna review plagues and how to survive them. Before the Scythe update, diseases used to come from random events only and spread throughout only your court. Plagues make it so disease starts and spreads by baronies, and any courtier of the barony is susceptible to infection. There is a new plague UI, which can be accessed by pressing the P button or by clicking on this red icon down here if there's an active plague in or near your realm. Plagues are separated into realm, nearby, and world plagues. We can preview the plague's disease trait by hovering over the icon on the left, and the game will randomly name each outbreak. Each plague has an intensity from minor, major to apocalyptic, which affects the size and spread. Down here we can see where it started and how many characters it has killed, and this little blue icon here shows the barony and county penalties, which depend on the infection rate, with the thresholds being 10, 50, and 80. The worst part about these plagues is that it will destroy your development, and this opinion penalty can cause constant peasant factions. If you click on this magnifier here, we can see the breakdown of each affected county's infection rate, and at the bottom here you have your court physician who has a few tasks now. You can either get plague resistance, increase your lifestyle experience, get some extra piety, or have him just perform his regular duties. The duties will cost extra gold per month. So that's the UI. Now let's talk about the mechanics. Plagues have a few major attributes. The first attribute is intensity. They can either be minor, major, or apocalyptic. This will determine how many counties the plague can spread to, how long the plague will last, and how quickly the infection rate will increase and decrease. Some plagues have modifiers that make them more likely to occur at a specific intensity. For example, bubonic plagues will almost always be apocalyptic, and dysentery outbreaks are mostly minor. Most plagues will infect between 10 to 200 counties at most, versus bubonic plague can affect the entire world. The intensity of the plague does not change the health penalties of the disease, so a minor one is just as dangerous. The second attribute is the outbreak chance, which is the chance that a new plague will start in a barony every year and is increased by factors that make sense, like cities have increased chance because they have more dense populations. When I looked into the data, here are some of my interesting takeaways. By default, the Black Death will always spawn in 1346 and will quickly infect almost the entire world, except the Black Death has a 98% reduced effectiveness spreading into these regions, and you can even see those regions are spared in real time. So if you like playing in these areas, you can hold your personal domains here. Consumption is more likely to occur in the Atlantic region, and it's less likely to occur elsewhere in the world. Bloody Flux mostly occurs in the presence of an army. The chance is still really low, but theoretically if you wage war on your rival, you ever so slightly increase the chance of starting a plague in their home. Just be aware, if you command the army, you can also have a chance to infect yourself. The third attribute is the spread chance, which is how likely it will spread into the nearby counties. This is modified by basically the same things as the outbreak chance, plus some traditions. The spread chance is not the same as the infection chance, and the last and most important attribute is the infection chance. This determines the actual chance a character will contract the disease and can be viewed by zooming into the barony and clicking on it and hovering over this icon. The chance is for your ruler only, so if I swap to a different ruler and take a look at that barony, the chance will be slightly different. These are the factors that affect the infection chance, and my biggest observations are: intensity increases the infection chance drastically. The medicine tree has multiple perks that give resistance, and this doesn't even include the health bonuses, so this tree is very useful for surviving plagues. Being old is dangerous, especially over 65 years. The water rituals tradition is a big boost, and with its other stats, it's a top tier choice for me. And the two biggest boosts are plague resistance and enter seclusion. If my resistance is over 80, then my infection chance is reduced by 75%. And if you take the enter seclusion decision, you'll reduce your chance of infection by another 75% chance. So right now, typhus has a 32% chance, but as soon as I enter seclusion, it's going to be drastically reduced down to 8%. And this amount can be reduced even greater if my resistance was higher. There will always be a minimum minimum 1% chance. One last tip is, because I need to be present in the barony to get infected, you can actually raise an army with yourself as the commander, and then you can travel with your army to a location that has no plague. Or more simply, you can actually just hide on a water tile, and you can be perfectly safe while the rest of the world suffers. If your heir is also a knight, then they can also be within this boat and therefore safe from the plague. There's also 3 diseases where being a commander also increases your chance of an infection. This section is about maximizing the plague resistance. So as we saw from the data before, increasing your plague resistance will reduce your chance of infection, but plague resistance also affects the daily infection rate, which, to review, is the rate that is responsible for these barony and county penalties. With 80 or greater resistance, when a plague happens, you'll see that the infection rate is going to be controlled. It's only at 10% versus for the other counties of Ennis, it has much lower plague resistance and consequently an 85% infection rate. And even if I buff the resistance to 80, we'll see that this infection rate will stay at 85. So buffing plague resistance doesn't retroactively reverse the infection rate. So to ensure you always start out with the lowest infection rate, you want your baseline starting resistance to be as high as you can. Here are some current sources of plague resistance. Perks give 5 or 10, with Medicine Tree again being an MVP. There are 2 duchy buildings. There is the burial site and charnel ground, which requires the sky burials tradition. The new hospice building gives up to 25. A court physician can give up to 20 on the control plague task. The sanitation tradition is available for Arabic and Byzantine heritage cultures in the high medieval era. And when the plague starts, the physician treatment event can give up to 25 resistance. I did the math and the expected value is best if I just go for the mild treatment. Even with an excellent physician, the penalties of failing are just too big. And lastly, there are random events during a plague that you can get extra resistance. Just note that most of the bonuses only apply to your holding, and your barons are responsible for their own holdings, which can mean that there can be a penalty in the development from that holding, versus if everything is at that 80 threshold, then your development will have a very minimal decline. However, as of video release, it's actually pretty easy to get to at least 80 resistance. The hospice building, it gives 25 resistance, but to the entire county. So you can build one in each of your baronies and vassals baronies, and that way you can stack the bonuses. This is another reason to leave tribal and become feudal or a clan. And depending on how many holdings you have, you can even build hospitals exclusively in your baron's holding, and then this way you can replace this with a different building that you might need, like military strength. Either way, the conclusion is that building hospitals is easy and essential. If Paradox nerfs this hospital stacking, then you'll have to mix and match from this big list. Now, what happens if we catch a disease anyways? Let me briefly review how health works in CK3. There is a hidden health value that is only reflected in the game as a level, with most base health starting at 4 and 5. Each disease then gives a temporary health penalty to this health number. Once you're poor or below, there is a monthly chance for you to die, increasing the lower your health number is. With the Scythe update, most diseases have their deadliness increased, and there is also a stacking elderly and child penalty. For example, Bloody Flux has a 3.5 base penalty and an additional -2 if you're elderly, which is considered 50 years of age or older. After some time, if you survive, you can develop immunity, which lasts for 20 years or is permanent. So here are a few tips for when you do contract a disease. Always have the best court physician you can. A perfect one is someone who has a maxed out physician trait and also higher than 20 learning. When you get the treatment event, I personally recommend do no more than necessary. If you succeed, you'll get a huge health boost, and I went from near death to poor. You can get a good physician by either using the search for physician decision, or you can use the character finder and look for someone who has the physician trait, who's not a ruler and with the highest learning, and see if you can invite anyone. Another tip is the medicine tree provides huge bonuses to health. You can get a small boost just from the focus. You can also get a massive disease resistance from the Iron Constitution perk. Resistance is different than bonuses since it only counters the disease penalty and does not extend your life. There's also the healthy and whole of body perk perks that gives even more health. There are multiple traits that give health boosts, with the easiest ones being marrying for the Herculean trait, going on hunts to level the Venator path to get more health, traveling more often for the Wanderer path, which also gives more health. Sometimes a physician can give you an event for an artifact, and the artifact will give you plague resistance and disease resistance. You only need to keep these on you when you need it, and you can swap these out for other artifacts when you are not sick. And hopefully with all those tips, you survive and gain immunity. I have an entire video on living longer. If you need help running your own genetics program, I have that video as well. And with superhuman dynasts, you can even survive the bubonic plague. And that's everything I have for plagues. To summarize the biggest tips, plague resistance is critical to reduce penalties and your infection chance. The easiest source is to build multiple hospitals in your baronies. For physician events, I recommend taking the first option for the lowest risk of failing. To survive a disease, I go down the medicine tree, and you can marry for the Herculean trait into your bloodline. And lastly, the easiest way to avoid a plague is to hide on a boat. If this video helped you, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It helps me tremendously, so thank you so much. You can check out my channel for other guides and leave a comment if you have any questions. Thanks again from Bread God, and have a good day.